Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. This is episode 14 of AWS tutorials. In this video, we'll understand how AWS Lambda actually executes when it is triggered by different services. Most people think Lambda execution changes based on the service, but that's not true. The Lambda code and execution are always the same. What really changes is how it is invoked. If you don't understand this difference, things like retries, failures, and async systems will always feel confusing. So now let's see this sync and async invocation difference. So this is going to be our flow diagram today. We'll compare these two flows. So the first flow is a sync flow. Here client will invoke an API and then API gateway will trigger a Lambda and Lambda will process the request and then it will return to API gateway and then to client. So here client will have to wait for the response. And in async flow, producer will send a message to SQS and it will get the response that message has been sent successfully. And in the backend, Lambda will run and process the message. So here in this case, client or producer will not have to wait for the response. So now let's go to AWS console and see the difference. So now we are in AWS console. Here you just make sure you are in the correct region. And now let's create a simple Lambda function. Let's create a function. Provide the function name. Dev by Shashank sync async Lambda. And in the runtime, let's select Python 3.14 and let's create the function. So now our Lambda has been created. Let's go to the code section. So here we'll write a simple code. Let's import time. And here we'll write Lambda started. Here I'm introducing a wait of 7 seconds. And in the return statement, I'll write Lambda executed successfully. So here it will first log this message Lambda started, then it will wait for 7 seconds and then it will print Lambda ended. So now let's see the difference of sync and async invocations. So first we'll deploy this code. So our Lambda has been deployed successfully. So guys, as we have put the wait of 7 seconds here, we need to increase the timeout of our Lambda function as well. So let's do that. We'll go into this configuration section. In the general configuration, we'll click on this edit button. And here let's increase the timeout to 10 seconds and save the changes. Now let's go to the test section. And here let's create a new event. And in the invocation type, we have two options, synchronous and asynchronous. So let's create a synchronous test event first. I provided the event name as test sync. And the event JSON, for now you can put any JSON object. And let's save the event. And now click on this test button. So if you see here, it has started the execution. If we'll click on this details button, here if you see, we got the response from the Lambda executed successfully. And here if you see in the duration, it took around 7 seconds to execute this code. And here in this case, we had to wait for 7 seconds to get the response. Now let's see how asynchronous invocation works. We'll scroll down, let's create a new event. And this time we'll select asynchronous. And let's provide the event name as test async. And save the event. Now let's test it. So here if you see, this time it took only 0 seconds to execute this code. In this case, it executed immediately. We do not have to wait for 7 seconds. Also, we didn't get any response here. So now let's check the logs. This is the CloudWatch log group for this Lambda. Let's open this log stream. So here if you see, this is the logs for the first invocation and these are the logs for the second invocation. And if you see in the logs or in the Lambda behavior, there was no difference. The only difference is in sync invocation, client will have to wait for the response, and in async invocation, client will not have to wait for the response. It can just send the request and Lambda will process the request. So now let's test this Lambda behavior using API Gateway and SQS as well. Let's create an API. We'll create REST API. Provide the API name. Dev by Shashank sync invocation API. In the endpoint type, we'll select regional, and in the security policy, let's select this TLS 1.3 recommended one. And let's create the API. Now let's create a method. We'll select method type as post, integration type Lambda function, enable Lambda proxy integration, And in the Lambda function, just select the Lambda that we just created and just leave all the configuration as it is and create the method. So now our method has been created. Now let's test it. We'll scroll down. We'll go into this test section. In this case, we do not have to provide any query strings parameters. In the request body, we can pass a blank JSON object. And let's test it. Here, if you see, it is taking time. So if you see here in the latency, it took around 7.2 seconds. So here we had to wait for 7.2 seconds to get the response. So this is how sync flow works, where client waits for the response. Now let's see how asynchronous invocation works. So for that, let's create an SQS. So guys, before creating any SQS, let's go to Lambda function and add a print statement. Here we'll just simply log the event object so that we can check from which source this Lambda is getting triggered. Now let's deploy the code. Now let's create an SQS. We'll create a queue. We'll select standard here and provide the queue name. Dev by Shashank async invocation SQS, and just leave all the configuration as it is. And let's create the queue. So now our SQS is ready. We need to attach this SQS with our Lambda. So let's go to the Lambda function. Here we need to add SQS in the trigger section. But for that we need some IAM permissions as well. So let's go to configuration section. We'll go into this permissions and open this IAM rule. So let's add permissions here. We'll create inline policy. Let's select SQS here. Now here we need to select three policies: receive message, second is delete message, and third is get queue attributes. And in the resource section, we'll select all and click on this next button. Provide policy name. And let's create the policy. So now our IAM role is ready. Now let's go to this Lambda. Here we'll click on this add trigger. In the source, we need to search for SQS. And here we need to select our SQS queue that we just created. So this is our queue. And here you just make sure this activate trigger button is enabled. And in the batch size, we can put 1 for now. And just leave all the configuration as it is. And click on this add button. So now our SQS trigger is ready. Now let's go to SQS and push some message there. So here we'll click on this send and receive messages. Let's provide a JSON object here. Here I'll write source is SQS and that's it. We'll click on this send message. And here if you see, we got a response immediately. Your message has been sent and is ready to be received. So in this case, we do not have to wait for that 7 seconds. We do not have to wait for the Lambda to return the response. And in the backend, Lambda will process that request. So let's see the CloudWatch logs, whether Lambda has processed this request or not. We'll open this latest log stream. So this is the event object that Lambda is logging. Let's open it. And here if you see in the event object, there is this body and source is SQS. Okay, so this is the event received from SQS. So in the backend, it has processed the request successfully. So guys, in the async invocation, client does not have to wait for the response. So guys, I hope this is clear to you now. Okay, how sync and async flow works. In sync flow, client will have to wait for the response. And in the async flow, client will just push the request. And in the backend, Lambda will process that request. Client will not have to wait for the response. So thank you guys for watching this video. In the next video, we'll cover SQS and Lambda integration, and there we'll handle retries and failures as well. And if you like this video, please subscribe the channel and press the bell icon. And if you have any question, just drop it in the comment box.